Hi everyone, my name's Lorenza and I'm going to show you in this video how to do the burrito method. Now, this is a method used for when you're constructing, say, the top. This is the top part of a jumpsuit. You can see it has a lining on the inside and then there's the outer fabric, and it doesn't have a center back seam at all. So this is for when you've got fashion fabric on the outside and a lining on the inside, and you're wanting to turn it through beautifully with the lining and the fabric, doing understitching and using what I'm going to show you, the burrito method. So you can see here, this is a really lovely lined, nice looking top. Now I've just turned it around the other way so you can see it from the lining side. So you can see there's understitching, and you can see it's just seamlessly all sort of encased. How lovely it is, and with no center back seam. So I'm going to show you how to do a top like this, or if you have the top of something, say like a jumpsuit or a dress, the bodice of a dress, this is a great way to finish it off, just especially so you don't get those center back seams. So to do the burrito method on a top, you're going to need the outer cut out in your fashion fabric, and you'd need the lining. Now I've cut this out just in some plain lining fabric. Now the first thing you're going to need to do is sew the shoulder seams on both your lining and the outer, the fashion fabric, and then I've just given them a press. So shoulder seam sewn on the lining and your outer fabric. The next thing you're going to do is we're needing to sew the neckline of them together. So we're going to get the lining and we're going to get the outside, and we're going to put right sides together like so. Make sure you're getting the front lined up with the front and the back lined up with the back. And I always pin the seams first. So we'll just pin the shoulder seams and just double check there. That's my back with the lovely square back, and there's the round front. So there is our neckline pinned in place. So we're just going to take it to the machine, and I'm just going to sew around. Now this is a 1 centimeter seam allowance, so I'm just going to sew in at 1 centimeter the whole way around the front and the back. There we go, sewn it around there. Now those of you that follow me know how much I love clipping in curves. So this is a 1 centimeter seam allowance. Now I know the instructions for this pattern and many other patterns would be saying to clip around, clipping into the seam allowance, and I disagree with that because what I was taught when I was studying was to just trim it down to 5 mil. So I will do that. The only part I wanted to point out here though, where this is a square back, I will absolutely be clipping in here into these corners, because when you turn it through, you want that corner to be able to turn through. So I'll just zoom in there and show what I did. So I'll just do it on the other side. So clipping in, absolutely you can clip into those corners, but as far as everything else goes, so because this is straight, don't need to trim that one down because it's not, it will turn through just fine being 1 centimeter because it's straight. Same as with these angles here, these are not super curved, but on that front, we're wanting that front to turn through quite nicely. So same as where it's quite straight here, we don't need to trim it off. So you'll watch me do it. I'm going to just take it from the 1 centimeter and then come in about 5 mil and then go the whole way around to about there, and then I'll taper it back off to the 1 centimeter again. So that is trimmed down now. And so now it's ready for understitching. So I'll take it back to the machine and I'll understitch it. Now, for those of you who don't know what understitching is, I have reels and videos explaining it, but essentially you are grabbing the lining and you're pulling the seam allowance. So you're getting the lining and you're pulling the seam allowance of the outer garment and the lining, and you're pulling it all to one way, because what that's going to do is it's going to keep the lining inside. If you don't understitch it, the lining's just going to want to roll and poke out. Whereas when you understitch it, so we're going to stitch along there, whoops, we're going to stitch along there onto the lining and grabbing all that seam allowance. And then what that does, once you've stitched it, it just makes the lining want to tuck under nice and neatly. So you do this on linings and facings because it keeps the lining and facing on the inside, which is where we want it. Okay, we've understitched the neckline. So it's sewn, it's trimmed, it's understitched, and you can see it's still wanting to poke out a little bit. So now I'm just going to give it a press. Now, you can sew it from the right side or the lining side. I often prefer to sew it from the lining side, just in case you have a fabric where if you press it, it's going to show through or make the fabric shiny. So I do tend to press it from the lining side. And I think you just get a really good indication of, you can see that understitching there. You can see the understitching there. And at least as you're pressing it from this side, you can really see where that stitching is and making sure it stays on the inside. So I'll just give that a press now. All right, that is all pressed now. So this is from the lining side, and that's from the right side, the nice fashion fabric side. So you can see that's looking a lot nicer. So here's from the back. You see it's all sitting in nicely. So this is imperative. You need to do all this work on the neck first before you even think about doing the burrito technique. But we are now up to the burrito method technique. So I'm really excited to show you this. So I'm just thinking with widescreen, the best way to show you, let's go with the lining side. I'll try and zoom out as much as possible. So the reason it is called the burrito technique is because you are rolling one side like a burrito, I guess. This is why it's quite funny. You're rolling this up like a burrito. And then what you're doing, and I'll do it on the other side as well, just in case it gets confusing, is you're trying to flip. So we'll keep rolling it like the burrito. You're trying to join these two pieces, right? But what you're trying to do is join them around this. So you're now flipping the fabric one side and the lining that side. These two pieces you will join later though, they're the side seams. But as long as you sort of get the idea. So we're going to put the pin here in the corner, because what we're trying to do, the burrito method, is we're trying to sew around the arm. So it's this section we'll be sewing, but I think you get a good idea if you roll the whole thing and just imagine that this is how it's going together. So we are just sewing this bit, but we've got a pin in there, and then we're going to make sure all this is tucked up nice and neatly in there like a burrito. And then you're still bringing that lining with that and matching that calico. So again, make sure this is all tucked in, and I might do the shoulder seams next. So we'd be pinning those. And then the same with this side. So we're getting, there's the lining, there's the fabric. We're going to wrap that around, bring those corners together, or the underarm together, pop a pin in it, and then we're still going to make sure all this is squashed in like a burrito. And when you're sewing it as well, we want to make sure all that fabric stays in. So I'll pop a few more pins in here as well. And now I can probably zoom back in a little bit more. But this is the bit that we're going to be sewing next around here. And so that is, I guess why it's called the burrito technique, because it looks like you're jamming in all the fabric into the burrito. And so like I said, when we go around and sew it, we don't want to catch any of this fabric in here. We want it jammed in as much as possible. So I'll pop a few more pins in. I'm pinning this slightly awkwardly because I'm just trying to film it. You could obviously maneuver it around so it's easier for you to pin and to sew. But essentially, that is our burrito in there now. So we will sew around the arm and the shoulder and around there. So that is just the one side. So I'll take that around and sew it, and then I'm going to repeat it. I'll come back and show you how it looks, and then I'll repeat it on the other side, just so you get a second look at it. So off to sew this now at a 1 centimetre seam allowance. So you can see I've sewn that there now, and now all we need to do is pull it through. So you're just pulling it through the shoulders. So I think you can see there, it doesn't look very nice because we still need to trim it and understitch it just like we did on the neck, but you can see that is now sewn. So I'll now show you that burrito technique doing it on the other side because we need to do both sides. So I'll roll it out again. I'll do it with the fabric facing up this time, just to confuse you all, just so you can see it from the other way. And it doesn't matter, by the way, which way you're doing it. It's the exact same technique, but I think it's probably good to see it done from two sides. So this is with the fabric side out. So exact same technique. This is the side we've already done. So this time we're going to be rolling this one. And so remember, it's this that we're trying to join with the lining and the fabric, but we're just needing to pull it to the other side. So I find if I always do these sides first and get these corners in, then I'm just not confused at all. I just know what I'm doing. So there's that corner there, and then do the same on this side. So flip the lining, the fabric around. There we go, there's that corner. And I'll just zoom in. So this is the burrito-y bit. So we're shoving all that fabric in. We're getting that lining to flip on the other side like that. And we'll pin the shoulder seams. I'm sure this looks confusing, but I trust me, when you give it a go yourself and you do it the first time, then you're just like, oh, that's really easy. So you see there how I'm shoving in all that fabric. Make sure it's all in there. And then just like the other side, I will pin it and I will go sew it and just sew around there. This is doing the other side with the burrito technique. All right, I flipped that around because it was just easier for me to pin. So we're gonna sew this around here now. We're back, so we've sewn that other side now. So I just need to pull it through again. So you're just kind of reaching inside and grabbing and pulling out the garment or the top through the shoulder. So it does feel quite bizarre and it looks like you've completely messed it all up, but once you pull it all the way through, it'll be absolutely fine. So I'll just zoom out so you can see. So there, that is the outside. Sorry, that's the inside, that's the lining. And you can see we have joined all of the arms and the shoulders. But you can see it's not sitting super flat. So guess what we've got to do? Exactly what we did on the neckline. I'm going to trim these seam allowances down to 5 mil. I'm going to understitch all of them. And then we're going to press them all. So exactly the same. I will point out though, so exactly the same as the neckline. I will point out though, when you are understitching, so I'll trim this one, when you're trimming and understitching, you will get to a certain point where you can't go any further. So just go as far as you can. So I'll just give you this one for an example, but you've got to do this 4 times. So I'll pull this out a little bit. We'll try and get to the shoulder seam, but you don't have to go all the way. So for that, I'm going to trim this down to 5 mil. I'm going to understitch it as far as I can. I'll show you once I've done all 4 and I'll show you how far I get on them. You can try and go as far as you can, but really you don't have to. Just try and I'll probably get to about there. And then I'll need to press it all. So first I'll do some trimming, then I'll understitch it. You'll see me do that on the machine, and then I'll come back and press it. And hopefully I can just record it all and won't need to talk you all through it. So you can just watch. Isn't that far more pleasant? So I will do all 4 of these now. All right, let's go understitch all 4 of these. Okay, I'm back and I've done my understitching on all of these. So now they just need a good press so they sit nice. So you can see I couldn't understitch the whole way up. I did about to there on most of them. So if that gives you an indication, sort of, well, on the back, there we go. I got almost up to where the back neckline is. And on the front, let's see where I got to with the front. the same about the neckline, because obviously that's when it gets really, whoops, sorry, I'm completely out of shot. I got up to about the neckline because you can see that's where it starts getting really narrow, and it's just very hard to understitch past there because you just can't fit the garment into the sewing machine. But that is still fine. That's still going to give it a really nice turn, and that lining will stay on the inside. So I'll give those 4 sections and those shoulders all a nice press now, and you'll get to see how much flatter and nicer it is all looking. So that is all pressed now. I'll just turn it into the right side. So you can see our neckline is done, the shoulder seams are all done, the underarms are all done, and this is starting to look almost like a finished garment. The last thing we need to do, and I'll show you from the inside as well, is obviously the side seams. That's the last thing. But I'll just show you, there's the inside with the lining. You can see all that beautiful understitching is just keeping everything in place, and it even looks quite nice. I know I've done black stitching on light pink, which you probably wouldn't do. I'm just doing this so you can really see what we've done. So there's the front of it from the inside. Again, there's that understitching, just keeping everything beautiful and flat. So side seams is the last thing we need to do. And this, I think, is, you know, the last easy bit. Don't worry, no more trimming, no more understitching, just some simple seam matching. So this is where we're going to grab the back or the front, doesn't really matter. And we're going to grab, well, the back or the front, what did I say? We're grabbing, yeah, doesn't matter which side you grab. And then we're just going to match that underarm seam on both sides. And we'll be sewing along there, so that is the side seam. So I'll just do that again, and we'll do that on both sides. So here's your top. There's the front, there's the back. We're essentially just joining your right sides together of the top and the lining, joining your side seams together. So I always pop a pin in the seam first, because that's the bit you want matched. You want this to match always first, because that's under your arm. And if you start at this end and then this doesn't match, it's not going to look very good. So pin those 2 parts together. And then really this isn't much to sew, so I would probably just put 1 pin in there at the end, and do the same on your lining. So then we just need to do the exact same thing on the other side. And while the top is like this, it should be relatively easy just to spin it around, because you'll get the same thing happening on the other side. So again, we'll join those seams first, and just pop a pin in the end. So right sides together, think your fashion fabric together and your lining together. So we're going to go and sew along here on this side seam, and this is your other side seam along here as well. So we'll do that, then all you need to do is press, and it's done. So the side seams, there we go, they're sewn on both sides. So now we'll just pull it back through to the right side again. Sorry, I have to keep lifting it off the table to give it a shake, because it is a full-size top. When I'm doing these videos, it is hard with full-size garments, but I did have someone say that they prefer to see a full-size garment because it is a lot more realistic, and I completely agree with that. So look, it is completely done. What I would still do now is open out these side seams though and give them a really good press. I would press them nice and flat. So push them open, press them nice and flat, especially here in the underarm part. And then your bodice of your dress or your jumpsuit, that's the back, whatever it is ready to be sewn onto whatever it is. For this was a jumpsuit. It was a stretch jumpsuit, but once I had done the burrito method, done all this understitching, all this pressing, and it was all ready to go, then I was able to just join this to the pants of the jumpsuit. So that, you can see it's like fully encased, and it's just beautiful. This is the way you want to be lining your garments. I find this just such a nicer way to finish them. and for just wear and tear and throwing them in the washing machine, that kind of thing. Hand stitching just can't hold up unless you're really good at hand stitching. I'm not. I much prefer a machine stitched garment. So this way, you could probably see how the lining, everything was starting to fray inside, but that doesn't matter because it will all be encased in that lining, especially once you sew those pants or the skirt onto this dress, whatever it is you're sewing onto this bodice, that will then keep all the fraying, that will all stay encased in there and it won't keep fraying. So there's the inside of the top, that's the back of it. Here's the front. And you can see it's just a really beautiful, nice finish. So that is the burrito method for when you don't have a center back seam in a top, when you have just your front and your back cut on the fold like this. So there's the back with that beautiful square back and there's the front. This works really well when you've got designs that you don't want to put seams in, when you've got to break up like say a beautiful flower print or something like that, you don't want to put a zip in. And again, this is a lot more on stretch garments. You see these both where they're on the fold, where there is no center back seam. So that is it. I hope you enjoyed my video. That is the burrito method. I'll stop turning the top inside out around the right way, but I just think it looks beautiful. I hope you really enjoyed that video. And yeah, thanks for watching. Bye.